Hello, everybody, and welcome to what I've been promising, which is the D&D Onslaught Tiermaker. Effectively, what this is I am going to be going through all of the currently released D&D Onslaught characters, playable characters that you can put on your different factions and your different teams. So effectively, this is everything that was released in 2023, and I am going to be ranking them off of my personal opinion and how I feel they are, kind of in general. The ranking system that I have in place is that if I determine it's in S tier, that means it is a character you probably you play in almost every scenario. A tier is someone you play in most scenarios. B tier is someone you play some scenarios. C is very situational characters. And F is just ones you only play if you have to. And what I mean by that is, there's some cell swords that you kind of have to play because of limitations on how much is on the team. There might be some characters for a scenario or two where you feel like you have to play them. Honestly, before we get started, I do want to say I don't think there's going to be many in the F tier. I don't think there's many Onslaught pieces that just are terrible and no good. I think even many arrows, I think there's it's fairly balanced game. Another warning I want to give before I do this is that this is obviously subjective. This is my own personal appearance, my own personal opinion, and I have obviously experience playing Onslaught. I played at at Worlds. And I did play Nationals, the qualifier, I guess. And I've played quite a few games of Onslaught. So this is my personal opinion. I could be wrong, could be right. Obviously, I know a lot of these characters are based off of scenarios, right? Depending on the scenario, one character might be better than the other. But the way I'm ranking this is kind of my own personal opinion. Like, when I'm playing Harper's and I look at the roster, I'm probably trying to fit this character on it. That would be something like S tier. And we'll kind of go through it, and I'll. The plan is to put the characters in their initial spots, and then if I need to do any wiggle room afterwards, we'll see. As you can see here, I've got it broken down by factions. We have Harper's going first, Centaurum going second, Red Wizard's third, Many Arrows fourth, and then I have the Cell Swords last, and I have included a Conque in all 6 versions of the Ancient Construct. So I will be going through all of them. Now, I will not be going through... basically, I won't be going through all of their powers again. I do have on my other screen... a handy-dandy notebook that I have all the character cards and their level up abilities for me to reference. So I will reference some, but I won't be going through all of their powers, kind of like I do on the podcast. If you need to, you can look them up. They're on the Discord. But let's just go ahead and get through it. Otherwise, this will be an incredibly long video, which it might already be an incredibly long video. So first up, we have Abellio. So Abellio is a tactician. He really focuses on controlling the board. He has the Spike Growth cooldown ability, which is a standard action, places Spike Growth, which I believe is like a 1x3, 1x2, within range 1 to 5. It can't overlap minis or blocking terrain, so it's very good as a control point of putting something down to block access to something. When he turns into a wolf, he's pretty solid as well. Now, he's a 4 movement, 12 defense, 11 health. When he gains wolf, he gets 2 more speed, 2 more movement, and 2 defense. So that takes him to a 14, which isn't great, but it's okay. And when he turns into the wolf, he can't use a ranged attack, can't use any of his cooldown abilities, or any items that he has. So, Abellio... and I should mention his level up abilities. Landstride, it does not cost you extra movement points to go up elevation or move through hindering terrain. You can move and draw lines of sight through spike growth tokens. I think Abellio is a okay figure. I think he's just strictly okay. He's not someone I try to fit on every Harper team, and that is because he is in what's the right word? He is in... Basically, if you're looking for a tactician, you're having to decide between Abellio or Nurith. And unfortunately, Nurith is probably the choice most of the time. So I would probably have to say Abellio kicks things off at probably C. I'm afraid to be putting too many people up on S and A tier. So Abellio, I feel like, is very situational, which is what I feel C tier is. So he's not someone that you play all the time. He's not someone that I feel like I reach for in most scenarios. There are very few scenarios, a couple scenarios, that I'm reaching for Abellio. Maybe some on some of the core maps where it's a control point, and so you're trying to keep your opponent, you want to control the map so you can lay some spike growth down. But once he has that spike growth down, that's kind of, I feel like, what he's good for, is the spike growth, to be honest. So I'm putting him at C. Jumping over to Nurith. Now, Nurith has seen a ton of play in what little competitive play we've seen of Onslaught. It started mostly, I think, because of his Ambush Master reaction ability. After initiative cards are assigned, exchange your initiative cards with the initiative 1 card. Being able to just take that initiative 1 is very, very good. And his stats aren't bad for everything else, right? Like 4 movement. 4 is a great movement. It's not the highest. 5 is the highest. I think Javika gets a 6. But 4 movement is great. 15 defense. Great starting point for defense. And 10 health. Castnet is great. Rooting someone is kind of doing a little bit of board manipulation and control. He has Castnet, which is a bonus action, 3-turn cooldown. Target one enemy at range 2 to 3, plus 5 to hit. If hit, the target gains rooted. They can't take move actions. Very, very good. We've mentioned this on the podcast before, that movement is very important. Very strong in this game is speed. Because a lot of the times, a lot of the scenarios is you either get to a control point, get to pick up a treasure first, get to the monster you have to slay first. So if your whole team is slow, it's probably, on those type of scenarios, you're going to start working at a disadvantage right off the bat. He also has Evasion, which is a bonus action once per game. Gain evasive, suffer half damage rounded down from all non-adjacent attackers. Solid. He ignores water terrain when moving, which is very good for the expansion, which you can see here. The expansion has a lot of water, so Nurith automatically gains a advantage with that. And being able to ambush, I think, is also great, giving him a +1 damage. So Nurith, for me, I'm probably going to go ahead and put him in S tier. I feel like if you're playing Harpers specifically, you're going to reach for Nurith a majority of the time. It's just, he deals decent damage, right? If you hit a non-champion enemy, you may move the target 1 space. That's just with his standard attack. Being able to manipulate the initiative cards is great. Casting a net is great and not that bad of a cooldown. 3-turn cooldown is good in my books. So I think I have Nurith up there that you're probably playing him in most scenarios. Now Chloe, we're going to talk about Chloe in the aspect of current Chloe. Don't forget that they took away the bonus to damage on her inspiration. That was incredibly too powerful, so I'm glad they made that decision. It would have absolutely jumped Chloe up to S tier. That isn't to say Chloe isn't S tier. I still think even without that added damage, I still think she's very good. Vicious Mockery, one enemy at range 2 to 4, +4 to hit. This is a ranged attack. If hit, the target gains weakened. Their attacks deal half damage. That's big. Weakening your opponents, dealing half damage, really changes the flow. The thing is, you probably don't want Chloe in the position to be within 2 to 4 of your opponent. I mean, there's a decent amount of chances, but she will probably be swarmed because she is fairly easy to take down. She is the Harper's main healer with a very good heal. It's a healing word, heal 2, one range at target one friendly at range 0 to 3, and you heal them 2. And it's only a 2-turn cooldown. So you use a turn 1 at the round 1, and then at the end of activation after the round it goes to 1. So basically every other round she's healing for 2. Healing I also think is very, very good in this game. Being able to heal up some damage is great. And then the inspiration just is great, period. She does 3 fantastic things, and that's not even including her level ups, which she should get pretty easily because she's gain 1 XP after you heal a target to its maximum hit points. You could probably get there reasonably because she's healing, every other round. So if you think of rounds going to 7 to 8 rounds, she's at least healing 3 to 4 times. And so Font of Inspiration, I think, is a big one. That one is a bonus action. This is the level up ability. Target friendly characters at range 0 to 3. Reduce the cooldowns of each of the target's cooldown abilities by 1. That's great, right? You can really do a organized attack utilizing a lot of different players' cooldown abilities and then use that to kind of go ahead and lower them by 1, reset some of them. So I think I really feel bad about starting this off with Chloe as an S, like having 2 S tier, but I feel like Chloe is still an S tier at this point. If I'm playing Harper's, I feel like I am reaching for Nerth and Chloe most scenarios. There's very few scenarios where I'm not reaching for these 2. Very few. Let's go to Sedona. Now, Sedona, I think, is an interesting discussion. I don't feel as strongly about Sedona as I do some other players that like Sedona. I think she's okay. I think her Hypnotic Gaze is a very powerful ability. Target 1 mini at range 1 to 5. Keep in mind it says 1 mini. Doesn't mean like an enemy, so you can target your own. 1 to 5, plus 5 to hit. If hit, move target up to their speed value and make a basic attack with the target. Cool. So she can move your own people if you want to. It's a 5-turn cooldown, so you're probably getting it once per game. Maybe twice. And then she has Twitch, which is a every other turn type thing. You use it once, 2 turns later, she gets to use it again. Twitch, target 1 mini at range 1 to 3, plus 3 to hit. If hit, move the target 1 square. So that is pretty good also. Her Guiding Strike is also one of the key things I think a lot of people also like about Sedona. Guided Strike, it's a reaction. Her reaction ability, 5-turn cooldown. After a friendly character at range 1 to 5 rolls an attack die, add plus 3 to the highest dice roll. I believe this allows you add plus 3 to the roll. So that means it's fairly easy to critically hit. So that kind of control means that Sedona is definitely not a C tier. Being able to move and manipulate characters around, I like. But she's not dealing a ton of damage. 2 to 4 range with her range. From her range, she can target 1 enemy 2 to 4, plus 5 to hit 2 damage. That's fine. You probably don't want her in there to hit. She only has 8 hit points, right? That means she's kind of an easy target. She's going to level up quickly because she's one of the few characters that gains an XP at the end of her activation. However, that's good because you'll probably choose her spell preparation level up. That's by far the one I think is the best. At the end of your activation, if you did not make an attack, you may reduce the cooldown of each of your cooldown dials by 1. So that allows you to kind of get to the Hypnotic Gaze quite a bit faster. All that being said, I find myself not reaching for her as much as maybe I should. She is the hybrid attacker, I believe. Yeah, she is the hybrid role, which I forgot to mention. Chloe was the healer role. She's actually the only healer that the Harpers have, so she's not in contention with anyone else for that. But Sedona has to contend with Eileen for that role, which we'll get to her. Actually, we could go ahead and do Eileen next and try to keep some of these roles together. I feel like I'm going to keep Sedona at B. B meaning that she's good for certain scenarios. Not a bunch of scenarios, not a lot of scenarios, but she's overall good, right? Like, B is good. It's not great, not amazing, and I may be wrong, but most of the time when I play Sedona, I'm left wanting a little something more. She's also a little slow. She's a 4. She's not slow. I'm thinking of someone else then. I'm probably thinking about Eileen. Let's talk about Eileen. Eileen is from the Harper's expansion. Honestly, I don't know if it's because I have a soft spot for Eileen because I like wild magic sorcerers in the D&D universe, but I do really like Eileen. The problem is when I team build. So I played Harper's at Nationals, I believe. I think that's right. I struggled to find where I was putting her because I had some sellswords also. I feel like Eileen is great in a pure PvP scenario. Like, if you're just going to take out your opponent, she could deal a lot of damage. And she offers healing capabilities and moving capabilities. She can be very chaotic, which I love. The only downside is, it's up to chance. And obviously, competitors typically don't like leaving up the chance. Her wild magic is a bonus action, 3-turn cooldown. Roll a d20, 1 through 7, one friendly character heals 2. 8 through 14, one enemy character takes 1 damage, which there's no range on that. So any one character takes 1 damage. 15 through 19, she can teleport 3, which has been great because her movement's only 3. Or 20, all 3 effects. She does 2 damage with her Firebolt. Her Tides of Chaos, the other cooldown ability, is a once per game effect. Gain Chaotic, which friendly characters gain +2 to their highest d20 rolls and -2 to their lowest rolls. Little spooky there. But you get to refresh wild magic. So I like Eileen. I personally like her more than Sedona. But if I'm staying true to the Tiermaker of, is she good in all scenarios? No, she's not. I feel like she's great in some PvP scenarios. That's where I like her most. Because I think she could deal some damage. She can heal. She can move. She can do a decent amount of stuff. But I don't think she's good enough. So I will put her above Sedona. But I think she falls into that B tier. Where she's good, but she's not good enough to be in a decent amount of scenarios. Remember, S is you want to play with them in almost every scenario. A is they're great, they go in a lot of scenarios, but not every scenario. B is they're good. There's a handful of scenarios you want to put them in, right? Let's go to Lightning Dancer. Lightning Dancer is Vanguard. It is the only Harper Vanguard, period. If you played the demo of Onslaught, you're very familiar with Lightning Dancer because he was one of 2 characters you get to play with. He feels a little ho-hum to me, but he is kind of one of the bigger, he is the Vanguard, the tank of the team, right? He doesn't have a ranged attack. He has the charge, which is a standard move up to your movement, then make an attack. 3-turn cooldown, cool. He has challenge, which is very nice. Target one enemy at range 1 to 3. Move the target adjacent to you, moving as few spaces as possible. Cool. Combat reflexes. His level ups are okay. But the key thing with him, the benefit that Lightning Dancer has, is that he is tanky. He's got a 16 defense, but he's also got a lot of hit points, 13. Not the most of the Harpers. I think he is second most. Yeah, he's second most, which is good. So I think you find yourself, because you're having to care about the different roles, you're probably playing Lightning Dancer more than you think you're going to be playing Lightning Dancer. I don't know if that means you'll play him in a lot of scenarios, though. Because, the sellswords do come into play, and there's some sellswords I like more than him. So I will also put him in B. I will put him ahead of Eileen and Sedona, because I find myself playing him more than I play Eileen and Sedona, just because you want that tankiness in certain scenarios. You want someone who could go in, deal okay damage, but really kind of block characters and be the one that says, come hit me, while they go do the objectives. Up next is Adnan. Adnan is the Twilight Realm, I believe that's the one. Twilight Domain Cleric. I don't know if I've really played enough of him to understand how good he is. And I've played a lot of Harpers. Let's be clear here. I've played a lot of Harpers. The reason being is because he is in competition with Grabbleshanks for the ranged role. Adnan has Word of Radiance for range. You target your space, +5 to hit, and it's a splash of 2. This attack doesn't target friendly characters. That's neat. 16 defense, cool. 9 hit points, great. He can't gain burning. Sweet, there's a lot of burning out there. Moonbeam as a cooldown. Neat. 1 space at range 0 to 4, +4 to hit. 1 splash, 1 damage. If hit, the target gains burning. Friendly characters at range 0 to 2 may heal 2 or remove 1 condition token. That's from his Twilight Sanctuary cooldown ability. Cool. And then he has just opportunity attack. I think he's okay. The problem is I'm finding myself thinking he's a ranged attacker, but with Harpers, there's another ranged attacker you're clearly going with if you need ranged attacks. That is the downfall for Adnan. So that's going to be really a C for me. Almost an F. I almost feel like you just don't play him, but that's me. Like, right? I don't play Adnan more times than not because Grabbleshanks is just too good. Like, I like Grabbleshanks a lot. So if I need a ranged attacker, I'm leaning towards Grabble 100 times more than I'm reaching for Adnan. No offense to Adnan. He might be good, but I don't want my ranged attacker to really only have 1 cooldown ability that has range. I know the splash of 2 is nice. Sure. But maybe I need to play with him more to see if I like him better. And maybe he is better. All that being said, Grabbleshanks. I don't think anyone would fault me if I put him in S. And I'd probably put him ahead of the other 2. He also, I believe, was in the demo for Onslaught. Grabbleshanks is just an amazing damage dealer. He deals so much damage. He has a range, 1 enemy at range 2 to 6. 6 is amazing for range, by the way. 6 is what you want. Because there's been so many times with, like, Lightning Dancer, I wish I can get charge a little bit more than what he can move. So, Grabbleshanks at 6 is great. +5 to hit 2 damage. And then you could take a bonus action to make a double shot. So he hits twice for 2 damage. That's great. Now, what was silly is the fact that you could have used Chloe to bump that up to 3 damage. And there's been plenty of times where my character that has lower HP just gets, like, immediately down to, like, his last hit point. It's ridiculous. He does get the Mark ability, which is once per game, but if you kill the Mark, you get to do it again. Mark allows you to deal 1 additional damage, so he could effectively deal 6 damage. With Chloe, he was dealing 8 damage, which was kind of obscene. I think Grabbleshanks is great. I think if you're playing Harpers, you're probably looking at these 3 a majority of the time, in my opinion. You're looking at Grabbleshanks, you're looking at Nerth, you're looking at Chloe, and you're thinking, I think I'll start here and build outwards. Drakmaul I've put almost in the same category of Adnan. Simply because I don't love what Drakmaul could do. Like, Drakmaul's very strong in the close range game. Great Axe, 1 enemy at range 1, +3 to hit. Only +3. +3's not amazing. That's one of the issues with it. 3 damage isn't great, guys. Or 3 damage is great. 3 to hit isn't great. But when you have Chloe, you have Sedona helping your dice rolls, that's okay. And Dracmaw makes up for that with Reckless Attack. Gain Reckless, you have +3 to hit and -2 defense, then make an attack. That's a standard. So that would boost it up to a 6 to hit, and then you make an attack. Okay. Neat. Rage, bonus action once per game. Gain Rage. You deal +1 damage, reduce incoming damage by 1, and slowed. Your movement becomes 2. Okay. Okay. So Dracmaw takes your melee roll, which the next character, Ayer also takes. I like to put Dracmaw, though, in more of the category of Lightning Dancer. If I'm building a Harper team, do I want Lightning Dancer? Do I want Dracmaw? I feel like I go Lightning Dancer more because of charge, being able to move around the game, move around the board a little bit more. Even though Dracmaw does more damage, it comes at a cost, right? It comes at a cost of I can't count on that +3. Now, I know in Onslaught, I've talked about this before, you have a much higher chance of hitting than not hitting, right? With 2d20s, you're likely hitting, unless you roll a 1. You've got a decent chance. I don't know the numbers, but I feel like you hit more often than not. A +3 doesn't help that much. So if I have to rely on Reckless, that takes Dracmaw down to a 10 defense. I don't love that. And Dracmaw's not easy to level up, right? Lightning Dancer probably levels up, gains 1 XP every time they are attacked by an enemy. Dracmaw requires you to get 1 XP after an adjacent enemy character is KO'd, which, funny enough, that doesn't happen as often as you think. So I'm going to put Dracmaw at probably C. Probably above Adnan, because there are situations where I use Dracmaw, but honestly, it's few and far between. Few and far between. Now, the last Harper we're going to talk about is the one that's in competition with Dracmaw for that melee attacker, and that's Ayer the Monk. I will admit, Ayer, at first glance, for me, I didn't like. I have since changed on that, because Ayer does a lot of things. So Ayer has talons, target up to 2 enemies at range 1, +4 to hit, 2 damage. So that's huge. Just being able to deal 2 damage to 2 people is great. Each target is a separate attack. If hit, they gain bleeding. So he deals 2 damage, and they gain bleeding, which is they suffer 1 irreducible damage at the start of their activation. That, across the board, is already great. He has Flight, which, once again, the addition of this expansion, you ignore elevation hindering and impassable terrain while moving and attacking. That's big. Being able to have Ayer just scoot out there is awesome. Now, Ayer only has a 3 movement, but he makes up with that with his cooldown ability of Tipsy Sway. Bonus action, move up to 2 spaces. And it's a 1-turn cooldown. So he uses it once. At end of the round, cooldown goes down. He gets to use it again. He uses it every turn. And then Frenzy. Frenzy is one of those cooldown abilities that sounds great, right? It's make 2 attacks, 2 melee attacks. He doesn't have a range. That's great, right? It requires a standard and a movement action. He could get in there with a Tipsy Sway, so it's one of the few standard movement action cooldowns that is pretty plausible to pull off an Onslaught. So I actually really like Ayer. I think Ayer is great. I like him way more than I like Dracmaw. The level abilities, he heals, and it's okay. Like, you may reroll your d20 rolls of natural 1. That's really good. Or the other one, after you declare an attack, enemies can't take reactions during your activation. That's okay. So I'm going to put Ayer in A. I don't think he's an instant pick on every scenario, like most scenarios like these 3 are. but he's probably up there on getting a pick. Like, now that we've covered all of the Harpers, I would probably start with this core 3. If you've got all 10 Harpers, once again, this is the one you get from the core set and the expansion pack. I would start with, in most scenarios, start with Gravelshanks, Nurith, Chloe. And then most scenarios, you could probably put Ire in there. If you need more tankiness, you could sub him out, put in Lightning Dancer. And then you just determine, do I want Eileen or Sedona? Or worst case, do I need to switch out Chloe for Abelio? Sorry, I don't know where that first one came out. Abelio? Because there are a few scenarios where, once again, you need to block things off. He's great there. If you need a little bit more damage, you need a more tankiness, then I guess Drakmaw is there. I still don't have a purpose for Adnan. I still think Grabble's better. Alright, so let's shift over to Zentarum now. Now, remember, this isn't in a vacuum. I'm doing this purely with, like, they're going to be intermingled with the Harpers. And I know that may be a faux pas, but that's what we're doing here. So, we kick things off with Mistral. Now, I've mostly played against Zentarum. I've played them a few times. I just like Harpers more, but I have played Zentarum a few times. Mistral, I think, is interesting. Mistral has a 4 movement, but also has Pass Without a Trace cooldown, which gives you a 3 space warp. That's great on some maps if there's a victory condition that, like, you get victory points for getting treasure, something like that. Mistral can really go out there and pick up the treasure and really go to town, right? 15 defense, 11 health. Mistral can heal 1 friendly at range 0 to 5, heal 5, and it's a 5-turn cooldown, so you're probably getting that off just once per game, realistically. Mistral is not there to deal damage, though. Mistral's really there to move around the board and cure wounds. I like Mistral. I don't love Mistral. Mistral takes the healer spot for Zentarum. Zentarum doesn't have another healer, so that's really the only one. I'm sorry, the healer role. There's no one else in the healer role. I like Mistral. I don't know if I love Mistral. There are just some scenarios with Mistral that you want that 5 healing, right? You want that extra movement, that warp, to get across to the other side, to grab a control point or grab a key treasure chest. So that's why I'm putting Mistral in B. Because Mistral doesn't really do damage, not that much damage, and the cooldowns are so high. 5-turn cooldown for cure wounds, 5-turn for Pass Without a Trace. I don't love it. It's kind of just a 1 and done or 2 and done in this case. So there's room for Mistral. I think there's a scenario, definitely not one where Mistral goes in C, but I think it's very situational. I think it's more situational than Lightning Dancer and Eileen and Sedona. So I'll put it kind of at the Mistral at the bottom of B. The melee attacker Lasael. Lasael, in my case, in my opinion, when you're playing Zentarum, it kind of has to go at S tier. I don't think there's a question. And probably, maybe there's some Red Wizards or something I would put even higher. But Lasael, to me, because of the movement capabilities, is incredibly, incredibly good. There's very few scenarios that Lasael isn't doing something very good. Sure, Lasael only does 1 damage, plus 4 to hit on the range, but also has sneak attack, plus 1 damage when you're melee, with your melee if a friendly creature is adjacent to your target, plus 1 damage with your range if you have cover from the target, which you can manipulate that. Hide in the Shadows, stealth, that's great. It's a free action, 2-turn cooldown. Cunning action is really where it comes into play. 5 movement is king. It's amazing. To be able to do that twice in a turn is where Lasael really shines. Being able to just move 10, turn 1 to go get something. Now, you couldn't pick up a chest because it's a bonus action, right? We get it. But the fact that you could get out there and stealth at that point. Run out there and hide, and then start controlling the map. That's massive. I will repeat it once again. Movement is by far one of the most important stats in Onslaught. Can your team move efficiently? And Lasaelle is arguably, maybe not even arguably, one of the best movement characters in the game. So Lasaelle to me, if I'm playing Zentarum, Lasaelle's like on the team. Unless it's like PvP with like not much in the way of treasure, then maybe not. But most of the time I feel like you are playing Lasaelle. Up next we've got Rocky. Good old Rocky Pyratrix. Rock Pyratrix. I just call him Rocky. Rocky is your ranged attacker. The other ranged attacker that he's in competition with is no one. I forgot about that. Yes. Rocky is a fire sorcerer. I really do like Rocky. I think he's not as good as Grabbleshanks by any means. But range 2 to 5, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. Dragon Blood, after you suffer damage, reduce the cooldown of each of your cooldown dials by 1. Burning Hands is great. A little tricky sometimes positioning because it can hit friendlies, but it's a 3 space cone, plus 7 to hit, 3 damage, 5 turn cooldown, which is a shame. But you also got Fireball in there, which is also a big splash to deal 2 damage. Well, 1 space splash to deal 2 damage. So Rocky can really dish out the damage. 13 defense, 9 health, but 4 movement solid for a mage type character, a sorcerer character. And if you crit, you turn down the cooldowns. So he has a lot of ways to get his cooldowns up faster. So I feel like if you're playing Zentarum, you're probably playing him a decent amount. Because range is good. Having a ranged attacker is good. And I think out of the remaining Zentarum, I think Rocky's up there. He would fit most scenarios in my books because you kind of need a ranged attacker most of the time. All right, so up next, I believe this person is hold on, who is this person? It's not Von Carr. Oh, it's Ruby Eye. That's why. I will be completely honest, I don't have the expansion for Zentarum. It's on my buy list. So I haven't played Ruby Eye before, but I have seen it played a few times. Ruby Eye is a Zentarum barbarian. My biggest issue with Ruby Eye that I've seen is Ruby Eye, 3 movement, 14 defense, 12 health. Solid. Charge ability, just like Lightning Dancer has. Move up to your speed, then make an attack. Cool. Battle Rage, gain Enrage and Intimidating. That's kind of it. My problem with Ruby Eye is that she is a worse Lightning Dancer because she only has a 3 movement. So a 3 movement charge isn't as good as Lightning Dancer's. I believe Lightning Dancer was 4. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take that back. Yeah, Lightning Dancer was 4. So that's really my biggest issue with Ruby Eye is Ruby Eye is a slower Lightning Dancer and doesn't have, kind of has the same, you have to attack me, but it doesn't have, Lightning Dancer has the capability of moving someone towards him. Ruby Eye has it where if she's able to be targeted by the character, you have to target her. So I guess there's something there with that, but that's a once per game effect, whereas Lightning Dancer isn't. So Ruby Eye to me is going in C. She is a Vanguard and she is in competition with Barachiel, which I'm about to get to. I think he is a much better choice than her. So I do think she probably is even worse than Drakmaw. I do like her better than Adnan. She sort of has a role, but I think it's very, very situational. She's just effectively a worse Lightning Dancer in my book. Up next is Barachiel, who is also a Vanguard. Barachiel, I think, is neat. Paladin, gain magic weapon is a bonus action. which is you gain +1 to hit, +1 damage with your melee, and it is now a fire attack, or sorry, a fire attack instead of a melee attack, so it's an arcane attack, I believe. That's fine, dealing 2 damage, +6 to hit, certainly fine. 4 movement, 17 defense is great, and 13 health, so he is arguably a much better tank. Just doesn't have the movement ability that Ruby has, but I think in the long term, with Ruby's was a 3-turn cooldown, you might be just moving more with Barrett-Shale. He also has Smite, 1 enemy at range 1, +5 to hit, 3 damage. If hit, the target gains slowed. So he has a way of kind of keeping them close. Because he also has combat reflexes where he can attack if they move away. So I like Barrett-Shale more than I like Ruby Eye. I think if you need a tanky person on the team, he is your best option. I think he's by far the best option. Much better than Ruby Eye. Also, I think... I won't say he's better than Chabelle. We'll get to Chabelle here in a couple minutes. But I do like him. I think he goes into the B class. And I think he is better than Mistral. But I don't know if I could put him better... I'd probably put him up here with Lightning Dancer, but that's mostly because if you look at Zentarum as a whole, there's probably scenarios where you need a tankier character. But tanks kind of lose out a little bit because, once again, movement is king, right? So lacking in the movement department or moving actions isn't great, but Barrett-Shale can tie you up, absolutely. He can sit there and block a doorway, and you're going to struggle to get through him. So I think he's definitely less situational than Eileen and Sedona, but remember, they're all in B tier, so they're all kind of, in the same manner. So if one's ahead of one another, that's not saying much. Let's talk Javika. Javika's an interesting one. Javika's a tactician. She is in competition with Dayu, which I'll move Dayu up. I don't quite know how I feel about Javika. I've had bad experiences with Javika, but Javika could be really good also. Javika is part of the tandem with Lasaelle, with the capability of moving very fast. That is one of the benefits that Zentarum has over Harpers, is they are by far faster than the Harpers are for movement capabilities. So in scenarios where movement is king, Zentarum is better. In most scenarios. Javika is a monk, clearly. The melee attack, +6 to hit, 1 damage. If they're hit, they gain slowed. That's big. So not only is she moving fast, she's slowing your opponents. The sling, +4 to hit, 1 damage. Flurry of blows is neat, making that one attack against everyone and slowing everyone down. So very much a tactician, controlling the speed of the game. Stun is neat as well. That's fine. 1 enemy at range 1, +6 to hit, 2 damage. The key thing is sling is a bonus action. The ranged attack that she has is a bonus action. So that is important because she could move, take her standard action to move again, and then bonus action to do her ranged 1 damage for what it's worth. That's why it's only a +4 to hit and 1 damage. Still, deflect missiles is also good. I think you're probably picking her a decent amount over Dayu. A decent amount. I think, honestly, I'm probably putting her more in A than I am in B. I think when you're building a Zentarum team, you're thinking about Lasaelle, always, and then you're looking at Rocky and Javika, and you're like, okay, these two could probably fit in most scenarios, especially with speed is a concern. The competition, once again, for Javika, though, is Dayu. Dayu is from the expansion, so I don't have a ton of experience, but I have faced a few Dayus, and has it been annoying. Feigned Death is crazy good. Gain Invisible and Rooted. You can't take move actions, so Dayu can sit up on a control point, gain Invisible and Rooted, and just really you can't do anything to her. She's there. Dayu is there. I think it's... yeah, Dayu. Hidden Blade, 1 damage, okay. Psychic Blades is good. One enemy at range 2 to 4 plus 5 to hit, 1 damage. If hit, increase the cooldown of one of the target's non-once per game cooldown dials by 1. That's big. Being able to make your opponent's cooldowns go up is significant. At the start of your activation, gain stealth if there are no enemies at range 1 to 3. So that goes along with invisible. Like, she's just stealthy. They use stealthy all the time. Words of Terror, 1 space in range 2 to 4 plus 5 to hit. Splash 1. Damage 1. If hit, the target gains dazed. If missed, the target gains weakened. Effectively, Dayu is very good at control point. I think control point scenarios is where Dayu shines the most. When you need to get up there and control a point, so say you have Lasayel move up and take a point, Dayu can go up there, stand on the point, and be invisible and impossible to hit, and then if it's within range, use Words of Terror to cause your opponent to be dazed, which is a terrible status. You don't want to have your characters dazed. It's honestly terrible. So for that reason, I don't think Dayu's A. I don't think you're picking Dayu over Javika. But I do like Dayu better than Mistral, and probably in this category of Eileen and Sedona, if I'm being honest. So let's now talk about Bedlam. Bedlam is a hybrid attacker. Bedlam goes against Vonkar Zod, which Vonkar, I believe, is this one here. Bedlam comes with the core game. Bedlam does decent amount of damage. You know, Eldritch Blast, 2 to 5, plus 4 to hit, 2 damage. Strike, which is a standard and a bonus action, make a melee attack. It gains additional plus 3 to hit and plus 1 damage. Has a effectively Curse, which is Mark from Gravelshank, so she can... Bedlam could curse somebody and deal an additional damage to them. It's okay. Bedlam is the Sedona of the Centaurum as far as level up capabilities. Gain 1 XP at the end of activation. But the level up capabilities isn't great. It's either plus 3 to defense or after you defeat an enemy, heal 2. Plus 3 to defense is taken to 12 to 15. That's okay. Like, that's not bad. But it's also kind of minor. 12 to 15 is 3, but in a D20 world, okay. So I would put Bedlam kind of B. I don't love Bedlam. Now, Hellish Rebuke is a great way to, like, hinder someone from attacking you. If someone's going to attack you and they're going to take that damage back, they're going to not want to do that, right? So people try to avoid Bedlam. Bedlam doesn't do a ton of damage, though. So I don't love Bedlam. It's kind of... Bedlam's kind of a ho-hum character in my books. But sometimes that's necessary. So I kind of put that in the same role of Mistral, in that I think Bedlam's alright. 4 movement, 10 health, 12, kind of middle of the pack. No pun intended. I think Bedlam's fine. There's some scenarios where you're just going to stick Bedlam out there. But it's just fine. Like, it's good, not great. Now let's go to Vonkar. Vonkar? I don't know. Another hybrid attacker, so same role as Bedlam. Toll the Dead. Target 1 enemy at 2 to 3, plus 4 to hit, 2 damage. I tend to always look at the ranged abilities first, and then go to melee. Vonkar can heal. Target 1 friendly character at range 0 to 2, heal 3. And that is a 3-turn cooldown. That's a bonus action. Super solid. Spiritual Weapon. Summon a Spiritual Weapon in a square at range 0 to 3. Now, the Spiritual Weapon card... it has a Slam, 1 enemy at range 1, plus 3 to hit, 1 damage. Spectral... It can't be targeted, damaged, or affected by any abilities. It does not occupy a space. It's a bonus action to activate the Spiritual Weapon at range 0 to 5. I really like Vonkar. The reason being is because I typically like minion-esque builds. We'll talk about Red Wizards here in a minute. Some minion-based builds. But having someone that can do a little bit more extra having a second activation, something to do consistently with that bonus action, I think is good. When you level up Von Kahr, you can make the spiritual weapon better. Your spiritual weapon gains an additional movement, +2 to hit, and +1 damage, which is great. And the spiritual weapon has a 3 movement for what it's worth. So, I like Von Kahr way more than I like Bedlam. I think Von Kahr goes kind of up here. Probably better than Javika. Probably not as necessary as Rocky. But I think Von Kahr fits the role of Mistral and Bedlam, effectively. Like, dealing the extra damage, healing, and, like, being able to add, the spiritual weapon out on the field. I like characters that can use all of their actions a turn, their standard, their movement, and their bonus. Von Kahr typically does that. So I think when you're reaching for something, once again, when I build a team, I try to look for healing. I try to make sure someone can heal somebody else, typically. And I find myself, for Zhentarim, reaching for Von Kahr a lot more than I reach for Mistral. Unless it's, once again, a scenario that you got to move a lot. If it's not one of those, then I reach for Von Kahr. And definitely reach for Von Kahr a lot more than I reach for Bedlam. The last one on the team to talk about is Shabelle. Shabelle, unfortunately, shares the role with Lasalle. You're playing Lasalle majority of the time. That doesn't mean Shabelle is bad by any means. Shabelle has a 15 defense, 11 health, 4 movement, no range, just a great sword, +4 to hit, 3 damage. So that kind of falls in the Drachmaw. Only 4 to hit, 3 damage. That's cool, but you may not hit it. Disarming Strike is a bonus action. Make a melee attack. If it hits the target, suffers no damage and gains disarmed. So they can't take basic actions. Neat. And then Stone's Endurance, bonus action. You gain that Stone's Endurance, which means you ignore the first successful attack against you and then discard this token. That's alright. I don't love it. And honestly, I think he goes down here and is the lowest of the C's. It's just my opinion. I mean, honestly, he might be the first F. That's rough to say. I don't know if a lot of that plays with you're playing Lasalle a lot more than you're ever playing Shabelle. But remember, F is not that they're unplayable. It's only if you have to. So if you're playing any sort of scenarios where if you played one character one scenario and you can't play him again the next scenario, then Shabelle has to go in. But otherwise, you're probably going with Lasalle a majority of the time. Alright, so just taking a look at Zhentarim in general, I think it's solid faction. It's interesting, kind of the juxtaposition that I have, Harper's and Zhentarim, where I think these three are better overall than these three Zhentarim, but I honestly think they're pretty even matched in all the grand scheme. Like, when you're comparing the two factions, Harper's might be a slight advantage, but it really depends on scenario. Alright, let's talk about Red Wizards. Red Wizards, I love Red Wizards. I played them a little bit at Worlds. I think they're great. We're going to start out with good old... I believe that's... well, hold on. Let me make sure I have them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, here we go. Basra. I thought that was Basra. Basra is the tactician. She is the only tactician for the Red Wizards. The thing you need to know about Red Wizards, which I've talked about on the podcast before, Red Wizards are fairly frail. Basra has by far the most hit points of any Red Wizard at 13. 14 defense, which is tied for some. There's others that have higher. But Basra is by far the tankiest of all the Red Wizards. Bazra has some movement capabilities in the sense of controlling the board. Spike Chain is a close attack, but it has a range of 1 to 2, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. Entangling Strike, bonus action when enemy at range 1 to 2, 5 to hit, deal 2 damage, and they get slowed. And then Second Wind is a bonus action to heal. That's neat. Like, all of that's neat capabilities. Threatening Reach is just an ability she has. You can use combat reflexes when a target enters your melee range. The problem with Bazra's capabilities, like reaction. Combat reflexes, after an enemy at range 1 to 2 moves, if it is no longer at range 1 to 2, make a free melee against that enemy. Because there's no, there's not the natural opportunity attack. Like, there is, a lot of characters have opportunity attack, but it's not not every character gets it. Like in D&D, everyone can make an opportunity attack if they haven't used their reaction. Because of that, a lot of the times you'll find Bazra with her range of 1 to 2, your opponent just enters the range and then they just kind of stay in it. And they're just 1 to 2 away. Which sometimes is okay, but also means it's a little finicky sometimes. It's not the best. So I find that Bazra works best when you need tankiness, need a little bit of manipulation, but she doesn't quite do enough definitely not enough to put her in S tier. I don't think enough to put her in A tier. I like her kinda in B, but I feel like I would put her definitely down beyond Sedona and kind of in between Mistral and Bedlam. That's kind of where I feel Bazra is, because I could see you playing Bazra in situations where you need more tanky red wizards, because she's kind of it outside of some minions. But you're definitely not reaching for her a majority of the time. Another reason you might reach for her is she's the only tactician, so she having a solo role on a faction is pretty good. It gives kind of a bonus. All right, up next, we are going to talk about Elak. Now, Elak is a cleric, a vanguard. Elak is in competition with Jelana from the expansion, who is also a vanguard. Elak, I think, is okay. Just okay. Toll the Dead, range 2 to 3, plus 4 to hit, 2 damage. That's okay. He does create skeletons. Skeletons are alright. 3 movements. 1 enemy at range 1, plus 3 to hit, 1 damage. He can make them stronger when he levels up. He has Touch of Death, 1 enemy at range 1. The target suffers 1 damage and gains weakened. That isn't a roll, it's just a bonus action that you do that. That's neat. But 16 defense is solid. Like, that's by far, well, not by far the best on this team, but it's good. 11 hit points makes him, I believe, the second tankiest next to Bazra. Yeah. But sometimes I find him not doing enough. Sometimes I find the skeletons lacking, because they only deal 1 damage, right? Plus 3 to hit, 1 damage. You're lucky if you hit with a skeleton a majority of the time, because you're also only rolling with 1 d20 until he levels up and removes that ability. So, all that being said, he does have the capability of staying around, because if you get in melee range, which you ideally want to do, he has Sickle of Life Stealing, 1 enemy at range 1, plus 4 to hit, damage 1, and heal 1. But I would put him in B, and I'm probably putting him right there next to Bazra, if I'm honest. I feel like there's other characters you might use more. Yeah, there's just other characters I would use more on this team. Just plain out. Let's talk about Fairloon. He's your ranged attacker. His competition is Zelsha. I honestly think Fairloon is very good. Like, I would put Fairloon up here in A, probably above Javika. Actually, I'd just put him next to his Dragonborn buddy, Rocky, here. Fairloon is a great ranged attacker for Red Wizards. You're probably playing Fairloon a majority of the time. Agonizing Blast from 2 to 5, plus 4 to hit 3 damage is a very solid range. There's not a ton of 3 damage range. That isn't a cooldown ability. Plus 4 to hit isn't great, but it's still good. Cloak of Flies is alright. Some defensive capabilities there because he's only a 12 defense, 8 hit points. Fireball, great. 1 space at range 2 to 5, plus 6 to hit, 1 splash, 2 damage, 5 turn cooldown. Alright. Counterspell is pretty solid. After an enemy at range 1 to 3 uses an arcane or divine ability and sets their cooldown, if any, cancel it. So you get to turn off a cooldown ability if they're within 1 to 3. That can be big in some cases. Like, that could be very big. He gains an XP when he defeats an enemy character. Sure, he's probably attacking a lot. If so, you're probably going for the defensive capabilities, not necessarily bumping up his melee. But I guess you could. So I have Fairloon up in A, mostly because out of all the red wizards, he is very much a attacking one that deals a decent amount of damage, and you need that. Especially since his counterpart, in my opinion, is not good, unfortunately. Let's talk about Zaelsha. Zaelsha is a ranged, a bard. It pains me a little bit because it's a bard that I don't really understand what college it's from. I'm a D&D player. I play on my main campaign a College of Creation bard. So when I saw Perform Creation, I thought that's cool, right? Perform Creation, 5 turn cooldown, draw a random loot token from the loot pool and gain the corresponding item. Neat. That's fun. His other cooldown ability, Pure Blood Poison, bonus action, gain Pure Blood. Your range gains plus 2 maximum range, taking it up to a 5. And enemies damaged by your basic attacks gain poisoned. Cool. 16 defense, 9 health. He can't be poisoned. But it's just a plus 4 to hit to deal 2 damage. I know Pure Blood makes that a little bit better, but that's a 3 turn cooldown. You're kind of poisoning a lot of things. But I like a little bit more consistency. Like, Fairloon does 1 additional damage. Doesn't need the cooldown to do something. He has an additional ability. Now, getting the loot tokens is neat. Sure. But, you know, you draw a random loot token. So it's probably... You don't know what you're going to get, right? So that's neat, but it doesn't score you victory points because you're not getting treasure, right? Drawing a loot token doesn't mean you're getting that victory point. I don't know. I feel like I go towards Fairloon a lot more than I go towards Zaelsha. And there's really not a lot of scenarios where I want to play Zaelsha. So if I'm playing him, it's probably because I have to. So that's an F tier. I just don't like Zaelsha. Sorry, Zaelsha. Jelana is the competition to Elac. I probably should have covered her a second ago when I did Elac. I kind of like Jelana a little bit better. Jelana is one of the few characters that uses charges. So if you look at the cooldown ability, she has 2 charges on Vengeful Smite. After you hit with your melee, spend up to 1 charge to deal an additional damage. That's cool. She doesn't have a ranged. 1 enemy at range 1, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. You can make that a 3. Cool. 16 defense, 10 health, 4 movement, which is pretty big for a paladin. What I like about Jelana is her capabilities of her channel healing. I like to put some of these charge characters up a little higher because they don't have to deal with cooldowns. They have the capabilities of continuing to do their ability as long as they don't run out of charges. Jelana's channel healing, 1 friendly at range 0 to 1. Spend X amount of charges to heal that amount. That's great. That gives you a little flexibility. You're not using like a 3 heal to heal someone who took 1 damage. You can kind of base your 5 charges and go from there. Or spend 3 to remove a condition token. Removing conditions, I think, is very important in the game. think about how many conditions there are. There's a ridiculous amount of conditions in the game. So it's very good to be able to remove conditions. She does gain the capability of getting more charges when she levels up. She can't. 9 times out of 10, you're choosing gain favor. Add 2 charges to 1 or more of your character card abilities. So if you're leveling up, which you gain 1 XP after the first time you spend charges during your activation, she's probably leveling up fairly quickly. You're getting gain favor to get 2 more charges. To 1 or more. So you're getting it to both, probably. So I like Jelana. I like her a lot more than I like Basra. I like her more than Elok. I don't think I like her enough to put her in A, because I don't think you're playing her in A all the time. But I do like her more. So I think I'm going to put her in the Eileen. Actually, probably up here, closer to Lightning Dancer and that area. Barachiel. I think she's probably your go-to tank you probably go to on the team. Let's talk Lament. So Lament is your melee attacker. He is in competition with Vendra. Lament does some very interesting things. Ray of Frost, one enemy at range 2 to 5. Like, I don't understand. I guess I do kind of understand. So Lament is technically a melee attacker, but has a range 2 to 5 plus 5 to hit, 2 damage, and the target gains slowed. Ray of Frost is great. Shocking Grasp is also amazing. The cooldown ability with a 2-turn cooldown. So every other turn, you could do 1 target at range 1, plus 7 to hit, 4 damage. That's awesome. And Lament creates a creature. Creates the Hound of Ill Omen, which is okay. Deal, plus 5 to hit, 1 damage. It can run around. It can get to Dayu because it can attack characters with an invisible token, so that's key. And it's a bonus action to do. Lament kind of does everything but healing. I really like Lament. I think Lament is an A character. Like, I would argue Lament is better than Faraloon. Hits more consistently, plus 5 to hit instead of plus 4. Deals less damage, 2 instead of 3, but also gives them slow. And they can also run up and Shocking Grasp them next turn. So I love Lament. But this leads us to the problem with Red Wizards, is because I also really love the other competition in the melee role, and that is Vendra. Vendra, to me, falls into a similar category to Lasaelle, but not as good. Well, I won't say not as good. Not as effective on the movement purposes. I really like Vendra. I think Vendra, in my experiences and all the games I've been playing Vendra, it really is a mental battle of, do I go Vendra or do I go Lament? If it's more PvP based, I go Lament. But a lot of the time, I find myself going Vendra because Vendra is by far the most mobile. Well, we'll get to Zook in a minute. Is very mobile compared to the other people in Red Wizards. The reason being is because Vendra has Writhing Tide, which is a movement ability. Move up to 6 spaces. Ignoring elevation and enemies. Minis moved through gain bleeding. That's great. Vendra also has Uncanny Stride. They can't take reactions after you move. Swarming Spiders is neat. A cone of 2, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. Doesn't attack friendlies. That's great. If you crit, they gain slowed. But Vendra has a lot of movement capabilities. Like, just honestly does. Because you can sack a standard to move. So you can move 4 and then do Writhing Tide to move 6 more. So you're moving as much as Lasaelle is. And you have a cone to do stuff. Like, I like it. I like it a lot. I like Marked. I like Vendra. Movement is king. There's so many times Vendra has come up clutch for me, being able to move as much as Vendra does. So that's why Vendra for me is up here. So much movement capabilities. It is honestly a toss-up between... Like, this is probably the most contested role in Onslaught right now, is Vendra versus Lament. because they're both really good. Speaking of really good, let's talk a bit about the healer role for Red Wizards. Quella is someone that I don't know whether I love or I don't love. Quella has damage capabilities, Ray of Frost, which Lament also has. Same exact one. Quella brings in Undead Thrall, so Quella brings in 2 skeletons. And I know you can combo Quella with Elac to get some stronger skeletons. They both can bump up each other's skeletons. That's a cool combo. I haven't honestly found it that great. But I find myself picking Quella occasionally. Negative energy will target one character at range 2 to 5, plus 5 to hit, 3 damage. If you target a minion, instead, heal at 5. You're probably not healing a minion, to be honest. You're probably using negative energy on an enemy, I should say. So, Quella's fine. I'd probably put Quella with Elac because I think they're a decent tandem. But I honestly find myself going for the other tactician, even though he has burned me, pun intended this time, more often than not, and that's Staghar. Staghar's a wildfire druid. I played one in another campaign, so I kind of have a soft spot for him. Staghar is a 5 movement healer, which is great. Cauterize, this is the one that stinks sometimes. 1 mini at range 0 to 4, plus 5 to hit. If the target is friendly, plus 3. You heal him for 3, I should say. If the target is an enemy, deal him 3 damage. I don't love a heal that you have to roll for. That kind of stinks sometimes. What's worse is if you critically hit them, you technically give them burning. I kind of wish they made a ruling that that wasn't the case, right? If critically hitting is a great thing, and I don't think they've made a ruling on that, but I think they probably need to for Staghar. Because if you're critically hitting, that means you're doing a fantastic job. And in my books, like, you're critically successful. But if you're healing someone, like, you shouldn't apply the critical effect in that case. That has happened to me multiple times, and it is borderline a little nutty. The Wildfire Spirit is, in my opinion, the best minion in the game that you could summon. Because it can go around and deal burning. Plus 3 to hit, 1 damage, and the target gains burning. It also has flight, which is key for, once again, this expansion that has a bunch of water terrain. Having a Wildfire Spirit that is able to go out there and attack is great. If you level up Staghar, he also gets the level up where whenever the Wildfire Spirit hits with a basic attack, you can reduce one of his cooldowns. I think Staghar is incredibly good. Not S tier. I do like him more than Lament because I feel like he's my default healer over Quella. I just really like Staghar. Even though the healing is sometimes hit or miss, right? The fact that he can give burning, Wildfire Spirit can give burning, that's great. Like, I think he's dealing a decent amount of damage. But he also heals, and the Wildfire Spirit, I think, is what elevates him. Last Red Wizard, and once again, if you've hung around this long, congrats, thanks, I appreciate it. Zook Doublefilch. Zook is another very interesting character. 5 movement, he's a rogue, he is a hybrid attacker, which he is, I believe, alone in that role. Yes, he is alone. Zook is a rogue. He has sneak attack, just like Lasael does. Ledger Domain is a bonus action, 1 mini at range 1 to 3. Take 1 loot token and its corresponding item card from the target. That could be absolutely beneficial. Like, could be amazing. It's once per game. Could be amazing. Especially if it is a scenario where, like, you've got to... Whoever controls this object by the end gets 2 victory points. Being able to just take that loot token is clutch. Just being able to just take it. You don't have to kill. You don't have to KO the person. He can just go take it. That's great. Very thief-like. Ray of Enfeeblement is great. Kind of falls in the category of Ray of Frost. And this not because it's Ray, but also because it's range 2 to 4, 5 to hit, 2 damage, but weakened is also very good. A very good condition to put on your opponent. He's most likely going to level up, gain 1 XP at the end of your activation. I find myself choosing Magical Ambush more than anything, because most of the time I want Zook to go early in the round, and that means he deals +1 damage against enemies who haven't activated, so that means he's dealing 3 damage with that Ray of Enfeeblement. That's a lot. Spell Thief, his other cooldown ability, is neat. I find it's a little difficult to pull off. Just a little bit. Because it's a standard and a movement, and it's an enemy at range 1 to 3. But effectively, you could choose one of their Arcane or Divine abilities, and you get to use it as if it's yours. That's okay. It's neat, but not, like, game-winning. I mean, I guess it could be game-winning depending on the ability, but, you know, none of the characters we've talked about have any of those that are just ridiculous. I think because of his movement abilities, the ability to steal the loot, but also Ray of Enfeeblement with the quick level up, I think I'm finding myself putting Zook in most of my teams. Like, most of the time, when I'm building Red Wizards, I'm building Vendra, Staghar, Zook, one of these two. Or, sorry, not one of these two. I can't choose that. So I'm choosing between Vendra most of the time, sometimes Lament, Staghar, Zook, Fairloon, and then one of these guys down here. Sometimes Jelana if I need a little bit more, you know, strength, some heat, more additional healing behind Staghar, condition removal. Sometimes I choose Quella if I need a different type of, you know, offense. Or Elak if I need some more, you know, if I need some more minions, I go for these guys. Or Basra if I want more of tankiness and I don't need the condition removal. But 9 times out of 10, if I'm playing Red Wizards, it's Staghar, Zook, Vendra, Fairloon, and then one of these. Sometimes Lament instead of Vendra. Alright, we're definitely well over an hour into this. So let's go into Many Arrows. Full disclosure, Many Arrows is definitely the one faction I have not played much of, because I don't own any of them. Now, I've played against them, I've reviewed them, so I have to use my Onslaught knowledge to really determine how I rank them. I will try to not let the general conception of Many Arrows influence my decision. So we're going to start with, and this is where it's going to be very tricky for me to see who it is. We're going to start with the healers, because there is 2 of them. That would be Snooks here, and then that would be Daramud. Snooks, as a druid, good berry. You can do that every turn. 1 friendly at range 0 to 2, heal 1. Solid. Not bad. Wild Shape Bear, plus you heal 2. This is a bonus action for 4-turn cooldown. Gain Bear. That's just funny on its own. Well, +1 speed, +2 to hit, +1 damage with melee you can't use. So it's very much like Abiello. Thorn Whip is its ranged capabilities. Range 2 to 3, +4 to hit, 1 damage. If hit, move target 1 space closer to you. Solid. So, the good berry is fine. Like, being able to heal 1 every turn is comparable to, like, Chloe, who can heal 2 to 3 every 2 turns. Like, don't let the 1 health thing throw you off. Now, the downside is if you go into Wild Shape, you can't use that anymore. But healing 1 every turn is fine. I think Snooks is okay. I would probably say if you're playing Many Arrows, which once again, Many Arrows is the tankiest of all the factions by far. Healing is going to go further on this. And I guess you could argue healing is less necessary because there's so much health out there. Considering your only other healing on the team, like effective healing, is the other healer, and that's really kind of a once per game effect. I would say Snooks is kind of up there. Like, I would probably move him up to the top of B, maybe almost A for many arrows. I think he's pretty solid, right? He's an okay. Wild-shaped bear's alright. Thorn whip's okay. Like, everything's just okay. But unfortunately, nothing amazing. I will say, if he goes into wild-shaped bear, he's a +6 to hit 3 damage. That's alright for close. So we'll go with B for now. Diarmuid. I don't know. Another cleric. This one I talked about before. This one is interesting. Very, very interesting. I could see you going Diarmuid if you don't want to do a healer. It does have healing. Cure wounds, standard action, 5 turns, 1 friendly at range 0 to 5, heal 5. Great. Fey Guidance, I think, is very interesting. Target 1 friendly at range 1. They gain Fey Guidance. +5 to hit with basic attacks. Like, that's really good. Flight, we talked about Ire, is really good with Flight. So being able to heal, being able to just do a basic ranged action, or not basic, sorry, bonus action, Fey Guidance. This takes their ranged capability. And also Fey Illumination. Target 1 space in range 1 to 4, +5 to hit. Splash of 1. If hit, mini gains illuminated. That's okay. Level up capabilities. Gain 1 XP after a friendly at range 1 to 3 hits with a close attack. That's probably happening on many arrows, to be real. Grip of the Forest. Bonus action. 2 charges. Spend 1 charge. Target 1 enemy at range 1 to 4, +5 to hit. 1 damage to gain rooted, and you may move it up to 3 spaces. That's pretty good. I feel like if you're playing many arrows, with the flight, with the kind of once per game healing, maybe less, but probably once per game, I think I like Diarmuid better than Snooks. Because I think Fey Guidance is very good. Very, very good. Like, I would probably... I don't know if it's completely necessary, but I'm definitely putting Diarmuid up there. Up next, we have, I believe this is Bryn 2-Axe. Is that another axe? Yes, that is Bryn 2-Axe. Bryn 2-Axe is a ranger, hybrid attacker. Does not share this this role. So Bryn's there for two. Hand axe, 1 enemy at range 1, 4 to hit, 2 damage. Sure. Throwing axe, 1 enemy at range 2 to 3, +3 to hit, 2 damage. Bryn can hit twice melee purposes because he has dual wield. Make an attack. This is just a bonus action. So that instantly elevates a bit. Whirlwind. Target your space, +4 to hit, splash of 2, 2 damage. This attack does not target friendly characters. That's great. Bryn is one of your characters that gains 1 XP at the end of your activation. That's great, because once you get Feral Senses, that's even better. Your melee and range attacks gain 1 damage. So you're dealing 3 damage from that melee hit, which you could do twice. So not as good as Grapple, but still good. Like, that's good damage. Like, that's enough good to put him at probably B, maybe borderline A. 4 movement, 14 defense, 12 health. That's all good things. I think on a team where you want to deal damage and there's not a ton of good range, I think he is solid. Even though he's more melee than range, right? Maybe A is a little too high. Let's put him at a high B. I think high B is solid for him. Up next, we have... Is that Clonk? I really should have looked at these minis a little bit better, but I believe that's Clonk. Or is that... I mean, I guess I could tell you. I could look up the folder real quick that I had all these tokens in, and I could tell you what this one is. Hold on just a moment. That one is... Clonk. It is Clonk. So Clonk is the ranged attacker. The ranged role. Once again, there's no one else in that role. It's just Clonk. Funny enough, he is a monk. Unarmed strike, one enemy at range 1 plus 5 to hit 2 damage. One enemy at range 2 to 3 for the range plus 5 to hit 2 damage. That's okay. 3 range is not great for ranged. Just period. He's got Flurry of Blows, you know, kind of like Javika has. Make it an attack targeting all adjacent enemies. Each one is a separate attack. 3-turn cooldown, fine. The only reason he gets ranged is because of Searing Sunburst. 1 space at range 2 to 3 still, plus 5 to hit. 1 splash, 2 damage. I don't like Clonk. He is not a ranged attacker. He is like a pseudo-ranged attacker. But if I want a ranged attacker, I want him doing between like 4 range, 5 range. And he doesn't do that. So I don't love Clonk. I think Clonk goes down here in C. I know he's better at a melee, and that's fine. He can fulfill a more melee role. But, I don't know. Am I being too judgmental because he's... because he's listed as range, but he's not really ranged? I might be. Because if he does gain a level, your attacks are critical successes on a roll of 18 to 20 is a pretty good ability. Because his critical is, after an attack, make a closer range attack rolling 1d20. So theoretically, if you get that and you keep rolling 18, 19, 20, he could keep making attacks. That's cool. I don't know if I'm reaching for him. Don't know if I am. Now we are getting into the Vanguards. There are 2 in this role. We have... The first one up is going to be Phelan. Or Phelan. Vanguard Wizard, which I think is interesting. A range of 2 to 5 plus 5 to hit 2 damage and a target gains slow. So Ray of Frost. But a Vanguard. Okay. 14 defense. 12 health. Solid. Ignore water terrain for movement. That's great. But only 3 movement. That's not great. Arcane Ward. Ignore, which is a bonus action 4-turn cooldown. You gain Arcane Ward. Ignore any damage. Ignore any attacks that deal a total of 3 damage or less after any modifiers are applied. Cool. Dispel Magic. Remove a condition token from a mini. Bonus action, that's a 3-turn cooldown. That's also great. And that's kind of it. So, like, I feel like Phelan is okay. Being able to move in water is great for this expansion behind me. Dispelling Magic is great. 3-turn cooldown. Sure. Ray of Frost, I think, is one of the better movement range capabilities. But that's kind of it. If Phelan does level up, Arcane Absorption makes that a 3 damage Ray of Frost. I like that. I would put kind of Phelan up here and kind of around Eileen and Dayu. Like, there's situations that you probably want to play her to give you more range, because I think she has the most range of anyone out here. Yeah, I don't think anyone else for many arrows has a 5 range. So she might need a little bit of a bump up because she's the only 5 range out there. But she's just kind of meh in my books. Now, she is in direct competition with Pale Maljax as the other Vanguard. 12 defense, 13 health, 4 movement. He's got Eagle's Flight, bonus action move up to 3 spaces. Enemies can't take reactions after this move. Okay. 3-turn cooldown, that's neat. He does plus 4 to hit, 2 damage. Eagle's Rage, bonus action once per game. Gain Eagle's Rage, deal plus 1 damage, reduce incoming damage by 1, and enemies roll 1d20 when attacking you. I guess I really need to look at these rage abilities, because I feel like when I'm looking at... first off, let me rank him. I think he's worse than Phelan. I think he's more in the C category. He kind of goes down here with his fellow barbarians, and this is kind of an ongoing concern I have with barbarians as a whole. I need to make sure that their abilities are fading or not. I haven't actually looked into that. If it's fading, I don't really love barbarians. I think they're kind of in an awkward spot in Onslaught a little bit. I feel like they have too low of a chance to hit, and even if they do, they don't deal a ton of damage like Grapple Shanks or anything. They can take hits, like Paul Maljax can take hits, but it's... I would prefer to see these rages to be able to do it more frequently than once per game, right? Because you're saving up that once per game effect for the right moment, and sometimes that moment never comes. Or you might use it at the beginning, and then you don't have it the rest. So I assume they're fading, but I'm probably going Philanen better. I'm going to keep changing that name every time I do it. Tactician, Pluk. Pluk is in line here with Thurkir. Pluk is a bard, has the second best range of Spirit Snare. One enemy at range 1 to 4, plus 4 to hit. If hit, the target gains rooted. Doesn't deal damage though, which is a negative. Blade Ward, when enemy at range 0 to 4, target gains Blade Ward. They reduce damage from adjacent enemies by 1. Cool. Warrior's Tail, bonus action, 4-turn cooldown. One friendly at range 1 to 4. The target makes a close attack. Neat. Bardic Inspiration is kind of nice. After a friendly character at range 1 to 4 rolls attack dice, reroll all attack dice. That's neat. Pluk just doesn't do enough for me. If the game is down to just Pluk standing there, you're in trouble. Because he does not... He can only hit close. I don't like Pluk. I just don't. I think Pluk is probably down here. You really don't want to have to play Pluk if you don't have to. But let's look at Tyrkir the Wise first, before we get into he's not great. Because this is the other tactician. Tyrkir has Bite, one enemy at range 1 plus 5 to hit 2 damage. Grasp of Hadar, one enemy at range 2 to 4 plus 4 to hit 2 damage. Cool. If you hit a non-champion target, you may move it up to 2 spaces towards you. Cool. That's neat. Grant Invisibility. Bonus action, 4-turn cooldown. One friendly at range 0 to 1, it gains invisible. That's actually really cool. Make one of your heavy hitters, one of your big attackers, invisible and run them out. That's neat. Well, except I don't think they could take move actions. So move them out and then cast it, I guess. Beguiling Aura, once per game. Gain Beguiling Aura, gain +3 defense, and enemies adjacent to you cannot attack you. Sweet. That's not a lot going on for Thurkir either. I would say he's definitely better than Pluk, but that's not saying much. And this is kind of why Many Arrows is kind of lacking a little bit. Let's talk about... Let's see, we've got Yvolda and Sarazumina. Sarazumina is a rogue. 4 movement, 4 defense, 11 hit points. Range 2 to 3 plus 4 to hit, 1 damage. Cool. Sneak attack, we've seen that. Wyvern Venom, standard. This is a cooldown ability. One enemy at range 1 to 3 plus 5 to hit, 3 damage. Okay. If hit, target gains poisoned. Solid. Ghost Walk, which is a bonus action once per game. Gain Ghost Walker. Gain +1 speed and ignore elevation, blocking terrain, hindering terrain, and minis while moving. That's okay. It's not an additional movement, so it's not in the Vendra Lasciel territory. She is a melee attacker, so she's in the same realm as Yvolda, which we'll get to. Sarazumina is okay. Like, sneak attack, don't discredit sneak attack. Dealing 3 damage or potentially 4 damage is... Sorry, 3 damage or potentially 2 damage from range is good. She's just pales in comparison to the other rogues that we have. So, like, I want to put her up here at B. Like, I feel like she's good. She's just not great. Unless I'm missing something. She gains XP every time you deal damage with a sneak attack, which, if you're good with cover and you know how the cover rules work, that could happen more often than not. But her level ups are just heal 1 whenever an enemy is defeated after range 1 to 2. Probably not that. You probably pick Whales from the Grave. After you deal damage with sneak attack, you may deal 1 damage to a different enemy in range 1 to 3. That's pretty good. Free damage is always welcome. So, Sarzumina is pretty good. But let's talk about Yvolda. Yvolda's a paladin, also the melee attacker. 15 defense, 13 health, 4 movement. No range, but a great axe plus 3 to hit, 3 damage. Okay. Slasher. Plus 3 to hit with your melee if the target is rooted. Okay, that makes more sense now why it's not a higher bonus. Ensnaring Strike is a bonus action. Gain Ensnaring Strike. After you hit with an attack, the target gains rooted. Unfortunately, that doesn't really go in tandem with Slasher. Like, they don't work simultaneously. You'd have to hit once, then they have rooted, then you attack again. Or, no, Nature's Wrath is also standard, and it's a 5-turn cooldown. One enemy at range 1 to 3, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. If hit, the target gains rooted. So a lot of rootedness with Yvolda. I probably like Sarzumina a little better. And because I like her better, I might move Sarzumina up and Yvolda like here in the middle of the bees. Because arguably you gotta play one of them, right? Like there's a limited amount of rolls here for many arrows, so you're probably choosing one of these. I think you choose Sarzumina because of movement capabilities more than Yvolda. But I might be wrong. Alright. Let's round out this long Tiermaker with Sellswords. Sellswords, near and dear to my heart. If you listen to the last episode of Onslaught, or second last, because I have this next episode to record for Onslaught, I was building to see if I could play Sellswords on their own. And I think it's okay. It's probably in the field house of many arrows, maybe a little bit better. But I like Sellswords. So we're going to kick things off. Just know that none of them share roles outside of getting to the Ancient Construct. Once you get to the Ancient Construct, it could pick one of the roles of basically any of the other 5. So that's where you come into which one's better. Hengaku is 5 movement, by far the fastest sellsword. Katana, plus 7 hit, 2 damage. He has a bonus action to make another melee attack. That's great. Kensei Shot is the other cooldown. Standard, one enemy at range 2 to 4, plus 7 to hit, 3 damage. He is a damage dealer, by far. He also ignores damage depletion with his melee attacks. It's great. His reaction's solid. 14 defense, 9 health isn't great. 9 health isn't terrible, but it's good. I think out of the sellswords, he's one of the closest ones to S. I usually try to fit him on a lot of scenarios because he has the 5 movement. That's great. He has a little bit of grapple shanks in him because he deals multiple hits. I like Hengaku a lot. I think Hengaku's very, very solid. Kithra is ranged attacker. Kithra, throwing hammer, range 2 to 3, plus 5 to hit, 3 damage. That's great. Inflict wounds is the cooldown. One enemy at range 1, plus 2 to hit, 4 damage on a miss. This cooldown doesn't cool down. It's a once per game effect. Crown of Madness, one enemy at range 1 to 5, plus 5 to hit. If hit, the target makes a melee or ranged attack against a target of your choice. So very similar to Sedona. I like Kithra. Now the downside is when Kithra gets bloodied, she only deals 2 damage instead of 3. I once again don't like ranged attackers that don't have a 4 minimum range. I think Kithra's fine. Like, be fine. Like, near Klukes and Lightning Dance are fine. Like, solid pick. But not really blowing it out of the water. Not a great ranged attacker. And okay, like the 3 damage is solid for a ranged attacker, but the 3 range is what I don't love. Drom. A lot of people don't like Drom, and I don't understand why. 4 movement is great for a fighter. Spike Gauntlet, no range. But one enemy at range 1, plus 4 to hit, 2 damage. At the end of your activation, adjacent enemies who are slowed or rooted suffer 1 damage. That's great. Grapple, which is a standard action, when enemy at range 1, plus 6 to hit, 2 damage if hit the target is rooted. And then the Hill Rune gives him some defensive capabilities. I think he's great as a tie-up piece. I think he's fine. I like that he can root people. That's great. I think he works great in tandem of some of the other characters we've talked about that have rooted or slowed. If he's on a team where there's a lot of Ray of Frost, like Red Wizards, I like Drom in that case. That's where I've played him most as a sellsword, is on Red Wizards where I have some of these Ray of Frosts, like a Lament or a Quella. That's where I like Drom the best. Though, I will say, that's kind of situational. Kind of situational. So I'm going to put him in C. Because I think that's kind of situational. If you can get him on a team with people who are capable of slowing and rooting, I think he's way better. But very unusual circumstances for that to happen. Molly Fairhill, I mentioned this on the podcast. I've warmed up to Molly a lot. Didn't used to love Molly, but I think she's a lot better than advertised. She's a tactician. Sacred Flame, 2 to 3, range, plus 5 to hit, 1 damage, sure. Ogma's Blessing, gain Blessings of Knowledge, so either plus 1 to damage or plus 3 to defense. That gets her up to a 19. That makes her really hard to hit. A 19 is difficult. She also has Dispel Magic. I am liking more and more the condition removal, and so this puts her up there with Jelana, with some of the other characters that could just remove conditions, and so that kind of gives her a bump up. Read Thoughts also is a great reaction, 4-turn cooldown. It's not as good as Nerith's I'm taking initiative 1, but it does manipulate the game in certain rounds. After initiative cards are assigned, choose 2 enemy initiative cards, look at them, and exchange them. You can really mess up your opponent. If it's their 1 initiative card, you know where that is. So swap that with someone that you want them to go first instead. There's a lot to do with that. And it's a 4-turn cooldown, so you could potentially get that off again. So for that, I do like Molly, I think, more than Kithra. I'm going to put Molly up here as an A. I think a lot of scenarios, and it's a little hard because if you're talking purely sellswords, you're probably, not playing her a ton. I'm sorry, I take that back. If it's only sellswords, you're playing her all the time. If it's another faction, that's a little bit more iffy. You could potentially play her over, like, Zook for Red Wizards. I like that in certain scenarios. Zentarum, that's a little trickier because that's between Dayu versus, who was it again? Javika? Probably going Javika in that case, right? Yeah, probably going Javika in that case. I think I just like Molly better than Kithra. I think that's the key thing. Now we're getting into the most recent characters, Akonke. I've been sitting here thinking about Akonke a lot. Akonke is really the main healer of sellswords, the only one that can heal outside of, I think, the Ancient Construct. It's a charge character, one of the few ones we have. I think charge gives it a little bit of an elevation because there's no cooldowns to mess with. You just have a certain amount of charges. Healing Elixir, you get 2 goes of it. 1 friendly at range 0 to 1, heal him 4. This can affect the Ancient Construct. That's solid. The range attack, range 2 to 5. 5 is the magic number for me for range. I like it. And it actually hits 6 because it is a splash of 1. That's even better. Now, it only deals 1 damage. So that kind of stinks. But I'm okay with that. Like, could be worse. And once you level up Akonke and get Alchemical Savant, after you hit a target with your range, it gains burning. That's great. that's Staghar level, right? Elixir of Boldness is neat. That's a bonus action, 3 charges. One friendly at range 0 to 1 to gain boldness. They get +1 speed and +2 to hit with all attacks. So I can definitely see, like, let's talk a little bit about healing. So, and I'm taking the Ancient Construct out of this for a Conke for a second. I'm looking at a Conke in a shell, right? So let's look at some of the other healers and talk about some of the other healers. So Harpers have clearly Chloe. Chloe, by far, I think, is better than a Conke. There's not really much debate there. Zhentarim. Zhentarim only has really Mistral in that field. I like Mistral more than I like... I'm sorry, I like a Conke way more than I like Mistral. Because it's more healing, but also, on a team that already moves a lot, giving that extra movement, like, turn 1, bonus action, a Conke gives boldness to Lasael. So Lasael now moves 6, then bonus action moves another 6. Like, that is massive. That is massive. So a Conke is a great healer for Zhentarim, in my opinion. Red Wizards, that goes against Staghar or Quella. That's a tough battle to get into. Argue it's more consistent, obviously, with healing elixir. Boldness means they could go faster. That's alright. I still like Staghar a little bit better. But a Conke fits in there. And then many arrows. You've got Darmood and Snooks, is that right? I really like Darmood. I think I'm really liking a Conke, just in general. I think giving additional movement, having charges, doesn't do much damage. I get that. But after you cause a character to gain a condition token, gain 1 XP, you're probably doing Elixir of Boldness. You got 3 charges with that. You're probably doing that fairly frequently. And then you'll level up and gain 1 additional charge for each of your charge abilities because of extra flasks. Unless you need a Conke to do damage. So for that, I'm going bold here. I think I'm putting a Conke up here in S tier. I think for Sellsword, you're always playing a Conke. I think you need a healer. Yeah. One of these healers isn't cutting it. I think there's certain teams in Tarim where a Conke is helpful. Very, very helpful. Chloe makes a Conke not as good. You can argue a Conke is more reliable than Quella and Staghar, so Red Wizards might like that, and the extra movement. Many eras probably likes that extra healing too. So S tier for a Conke. I just like it. And then finally, we'll briefly go through the Ancient Construct because I did go over it on the last podcast episode. The first one up is we have funny enough, the Apothecary, who takes the healing spot. Mending Ray, 3-turn cooldown bonus action, 1 friendly, a range of 1 to 3, heal 1, and you can spend XP to make that better. So, Ancient Construct has 2 activations. It's 2 characters, effectively, in 1. I'm still on the fence on how good it is. I need to play it more. I will go ahead and tell you I don't think any of these are S rank by far. It's whether I think it's A or C. I think most of them might fall into B. Healing, to take up 2 slots for healing, I don't think is good. Like, I just don't think that does enough to warrant losing 2 characters for. So for that, I'm going to put this down in C. There's probably better healers. Honestly, a Conke is probably a better choice as a healing than this. Up next is Arbalest the Ranger. 1 enemy at range 2 to 3 plus 5 to hit 3 damage. You may spend XP to increase the maximum range by the amount of XP spent. That's solid. Barrage, 1 enemy of range 2 to 5 plus 7 to hit. So one of the weaknesses of Sellswords currently, until we get the expansion, is they don't really have a lot of range. Many Arrows also doesn't have much range. So having Barrage, having Giant Bolts, makes Arbalest elevate just slightly. Like, I don't think it's A tier. I think it's B, and I think it's in here amidst the middle. Like, no, I would put it probably up here with Kithra, right? Actually, no, I think it's better than Kithra. Because you're getting 2 activations. So you're getting the capabilities of hitting multiple times. And remember, it has Chain Fist, range 2 to 4, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage, period. So, like, that's solid. You just have that, you gain XP, and then you're able to use Giant Bolts or Barrage. I like that. So I like it better than Kithra, for sure. Up next is Defender. It takes the Vanguard slot. Shield Charge, move up to your speed, spending any amount of XP to move that many extra spaces and make an attack. That's solid. 3-turn cooldown. That's even better. And make it against an adjacent target with +2 to hit and +1 damage. So you are hitting 7 for 3. And you're moving 3, but you're a big old construct, right? And the Conky could make you go faster. So I do like Shield Charge, especially since it's on a 2-turn cooldown, but you also have to keep in mind you activate twice. So that's effectively... It's a 3-turn cooldown. So turn 1, you use it. It goes to 2 at the end of the turn. It goes to 1. Third turn you can use it, but you've gone through 6 activations, right? That's something to keep in mind with these, is that all of these have the same cooldown capabilities. I think Shield Charge is fine. I think it's in B, but I think it's near the end. Because the other thing I mentioned on the podcast is, even though it is a Vanguard, it is still only 14 defense, 10 health. Technically 20 because of both sides. That's not great for a Vanguard, in my opinion. Next, we have the Grappler. Grappler's a monk, a melee attacker. Target your space, +5 to hit, splash of 1, 2 damage. When you declare this attack, you may spend 2 XP. If you do, any mini hit by this attack gains slowed and weakened. You can, that works well, or would have worked well with Drom, but they share the same role. Which is silly, man. That's just silly. This should have been like the melee attacker and have the fighter the other one. If this could have worked in tandem with Drom, this would have been a great 1-2 combo, man. But it doesn't. It doesn't. I don't think it's that good. I mean, it's okay, right? It's okay. It's probably better than the healer, to be honest, because it could do some things. It could get in there and punch. So we'll put it down here with the Barbarians. 2 more to go. We've got the Mage. The Mage is the one I like probably most out of these. Orb Blast has a 2-turn cooldown instead of the 3 and is a standard. One enemy at range 2 to 4 +6 to hit. You deal 2 damage and you can spend XP to move them away from you. That many squares. I love that. Movement capabilities is great. It's a tactician though. So for certain factions, that's not great. Refraction. Refraction, I think, is one of the coolest abilities in the game. If you could pull it off. It takes a standard and a movement once per game. A 4-range cone, which is huge. +5 to hit, 2 damage, and you may move the target. I should say targets. Move the target up to 2 spaces. This attack does not target friendly characters, so being able to manipulate the board with a cone is great, especially for control point missions, stuff like that. That's great. Like, I really like Orb Mage. The Wizard. Ancient Construct. I don't know if it's enough for A. It might be enough for A. That is once per game effect, but the 2-turn cooldown of Orb Blast is why I think I'm going to put it at the bottom of A. Maybe above Molly. Because I do think Orb Blast is solid. Being able to use that every other turn, well, every other round, makes this useful, right? 3-turn cooldown for the Ancient Construct is a lifetime. 2 is reasonable. And then the final one is the Fighter, melee attacker, giant slash, one enemy at range 1 to 2, +4 to hit, 3 damage. You can increase the damage when you declare this attack. You may spend XP to increase damage by 1 for each XP spent. That's interesting. You can deal a lot of damage in one slash. Like, you build up some XP. That can be a lot. And the Ancient Construct gains 1 XP at the end of the activation. So, first turn goes twice. He has 2 activations. Every round, it's gaining 2. So if you're making an attack dealing 3 damage and you bump that up to 7, that's pretty big. Whirlwind does something similar, but you use XP to expand the splash amount, but it will hit friendlies. But Giant Strike, that capability of like round 3, dealing like 7 damage, probably more, I think warrants it being kind of up here with Arbalist, probably above the many arrows, because I think it is a good something that could deal that much damage. Has potential. Now, will it die before it gets there? Potentially, right? That's always a potential. So let's take a look. I finished the Tiermaker, right? So let me take a look at how I feel about everything in general. Looking at it, you can see clearly where I feel like Many Arrows just doesn't meet up to the standard of Red Wizards, Harpers, and Zentarum. It's as if Many Arrows is just missing a little something, maybe not enough range, maybe not enough range damage. But, Sellswords can help a little bit, but Sellswords doesn't even have a lot of range damage outside of Arbalist and Kithra. So, I feel bad a little bit for Many Arrows. I don't feel bad for the F rank. That's kind of what I was assuming was going to be an F rank to, not to begin with, but I knew there was going to be a couple. For the C, I'm not surprised. The more that I look at it, the more that I feel like Barbarians just kind of lack a little bit. And maybe that's on me as a player. Maybe I don't play Barbarians well enough in this game. But to be slow, kind of tanky, but kind of not. But to have a cool rage ability, you only use once. But then it falls apart. I don't love it. And I may be thinking of that incorrectly. I hope I'm not. I hope I'm not doing the rage power wrong, but I do believe it's fading. I believe that's the intent, is that it was supposed to be fading. I am under the impression almost every condition is fading, unless it doesn't say so. That's just me, though. I'm probably wrong on that. But that's going to be it for the Tiermaker. This was fun. It was nice to look at all the characters again, especially leading up to Adepticon, which is in a couple months. So if you're looking to play at Adepticon, which I hope everyone is, I hope everyone shows up to Adepticon to play, you can help use this Tiermaker, this is once again my opinion, to figure out what characters you want to play from what faction. Based off of this, it's kind of, honestly, it's real close. Like, Red Wizards and Zentarum and Harper, I feel like are really balanced, guys. I don't know. Like, I know I have 3 Harpers up there in S, but I only have 1 in A, and everyone else is in B. And then you have 1 Zentarum in S, but you've got 3 in A. So, like, there's a little bit of a balance there, right? And then Red Wizards, I have 1 in S and 4 in A. But you can't play one of the S's and one of the A's, right? You can't play Lament and Fendra. But that just tells to the design of the game, the fact that I feel like it's pretty, like it's balanced. Outside of, like, Many Arrows probably needs a bump. Staghar needs to not burn his friends when he critically hits. And I can't wait to see what Sellswords have in their expansion. I hope we get, effectively in Sellswords, I hope we get another like a ranged attacker, like a solid ranged attacker. I don't think we need healing, because I think Akanke is very good. Maybe a better tanky person than Drom. Drom's solid, but maybe if there's another person who could work with Drom, like the grappler should have worked with Drom. Someone who can help root and slow so Drom can utilize that capability, I think it would be really good also. If you like the Tiermaker, I did make it a template out there, so I will try to post the link in the description. But if not, go out there, and I'm probably the only Onslaught Tiermaker. Go make your own, post it in the Discord. I would love to see what you guys, how you guys rank them. I would love to get other people's opinions, because I think the one thing Onslaught really needs is a lot more community interaction, a lot more people talking about the game, giving their opinions, talking about, oh, I love Akonke, I love Nerth, Nerth's amazing. That's what I want to hear. I want to have these kind of debates with you guys. So I appreciate you all watching this. Stay tuned. I'm going to keep trying to post stuff on my YouTube about not just Onslaught, but HeroClix, other stuff as well. And be sure to check out the GWiz podcast. We're going strong there. And I will see you all next time. See ya.